It is occasionally likely that the table scan will be faster than using the non-clustered index. The optimizer will do so based on the statistics it's got. We already talked about OR indexing. I'm going to skip past this because time is running low. The idea here is that the optimizer will use an index per portion, per clause of the OR clause, and it will resolve this as it needs to in order to avoid picking up duplications. Index selection in the select list. This simply is to reinforce the index covering. Composite indexes. Now we get interesting. Here we have an index on division, department, and empnum. The question becomes, which will we use for which types of queries? Let's think about this one. An index, a telephone book is an index. A telephone book is an index on last name, first name, middle name, which brings you back an address and a phone number. So using the telephone book as an example, if I say, go get Jeff Garbus, what you're going to do is you're going to turn to the G's, you're going to slow down, you get the GARs, you're going to open up the telephone book, you're going to scan down with your finger until you see Jeff Garbus, and you're going to say, your address is and your telephone number is. That's a pretty fast lookup. Whoever invented the telephone book was a genius. Now, the next question becomes, what if I say, give me all the Jeffs? When I say give me all the Jeffs, is that a useful index? Is a telephone book good for get me all the Jeffs? Well, it's really not, because we have to turn every single page of the telephone book and check it for a Jeff. Index selection is the same. If I'm not using the first column of the index, I'm probably not going to select the index. Now, around version 12, Sybase came up with some interesting strategies, things like non-matching hash scans, which allow it to say, you know, scanning the index is going to be faster than scanning the table. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, that does not make an efficient use of the index, but in general, let's say that the efficient use of the index is going to require using the first column of the index. Note that each additional index impacts update performance. I got a call from a customer not too long ago who said, Jeff, our inserts are taking 3 to 5 seconds. And I asked, what else are you doing? And they said nothing. And I said, okay, what's the trigger doing that's on the table? And they said, we haven't got a trigger on the table. And I said, how many indexes have you got on the table? They said, how do I tell? So we ran a quick query, and we found out they had 110 indexes on the table. I said 3 to 5 seconds is pretty quick. Each additional index means that when you insert the row, you also have to insert the row into that additional index structure. These things tend to add up. Index usefulness, some things to know. The optimizer will estimate the number of rows that it's getting back. It will use the statistics and the sysstatistics and the systabstats tables as appropriate where things are going to happen there. If the stats are available, if the stats are not available, meaning you perhaps created the index on an empty table and never did an update stats, it will estimate. It will also estimate if the SARG does not match well with a column. Estimates tend to be like this. If you have an equality, for example, column equals 5, it assumes you're going to hit 10% of the table. This is high, but this is the estimate it's been using since time immemorial. If you're going after a closed range search, 25%, and open range search, 33%. Note that these are not ranges which lend themselves well to selecting non-clustered indexes. If in fact you are seeing table scans where you expect to use a non-clustered index, chances are your data type is mismatching, or your search is off, or your index stats are not up to date. The optimizer will improvise a SARG where possible. We do recommend that you don't do things like put 5 times 12, which is an expression rather than the SARG. Although the estimates that the server uses these days tends to get them right, I tend not to like to put it to the test. I'm going to skip the estimating logical page I/O because I'm rapidly running out of time. Data distribution, the idea here is that we store the index statistics. If you don't already do it, you should be doing an update index statistics on your table. You probably want to use some sort of a sampling on that rather than sampling the whole table. A friend of mine, Eric Miner, did a lot of benchmarking on that, and he said that they found that the optimizer got as good results with a 10% sampling as they did with a 100% sampling on all of the benchmarks that they looked at. So I tend to err err on the side of paranoia, I use 20 or 25%. You're still getting a good sampling, and you're still getting a little bit overkill. Note also that those can be run in parallel, and even though they can be a little intrusive from an I/O standpoint, they tend not to do any locking. So if you have to, you can do that real time. I recommend you do not force index selection, but in situations where you have information about a table that the optimizer does not, or if you've proven the optimizer wrong, two ways of forcing the index. We do not recommend you do it this way. I leave it here for reference purposes because you will see legacy applications that have indexes forced like this. This is choosing an index ID. And you can pick up the index IDs with this select on the top right. We do recommend we use the new syntax, which is actually ANSI standard, to put the index hint in the select statement. Say titles, open paren, index, name of the index. We do recommend that instead you identify why the optimizer picked things incorrectly and get that fixed. If you do end up forcing an index in production, take the time to figure out why it ended up getting forced. There's probably some other underlying problem. You want to fix that before your next release comes up because you need to maintain all these copies. So, summary, the optimizer uses indexes to improve query performance. Have fun with the indexes. Look out for partitions. So, at this point, I'm going to look for any questions. I do not see any questions. Has anybody got questions for me? Peter, have you made it back? Would you like to do your portion of the presentation at this point?
Yes, I have. Thanks, Jeff. First of all, I'd like to thank Mike and everyone from ISUG. We appreciate your support. This is the second of many webinars that we plan on doing this year. And just, Jeff, if you could move the slides forward a bit. There we go. Mark your calendar, folks. The next event is scheduled for Friday, the 18th. It's going to be a seated seminar in New York City for those who are local, as well as a broadcasted webinar. And the topic is going to be ASE 15 performance and tuning. More details will be sent out as we get closer to the event. For those that do not know us, we are a consulting services company. We specialize in enterprise data management. Many of our team members come from Sybase, and we provide Sybase consulting to our customers on a global basis, specifically in performance and tuning, migrations, and training. We also work with SQL Server, Oracle, and DB2. Also, we have started a DBA group on LinkedIn, and it's called MLogica DBA Group, and this is a technical group where you can raise questions pretty much about any database, and our principal level DBAs, including Jeff, will be happy to respond. So if you're interested, please contact me or please look us up on LinkedIn. Mike, back to you.
Thanks, Peter. Jeff, I appreciate the presentation. That was a great job.
Thank you.
We did have very few questions. However, if you would like to submit questions by email, you can certainly do that. You can actually submit those to myself if you would like, mike@isug.com, or as the slide says, mike.harold@isug.com. Either one will work, or you could submit them to Peter as well. Also, we are looking for suggestions for future topics for later in the year. Next month is already set, and but I'm not sure that we've got a definitive topic yet for July and onwards. So if there's something you specifically want us to cover, or if there's anything you'd like to see covered in more technical detail, we'd be happy to consider that and get a presentation put together for the things that meet your needs the best. One of the questions that did come in repeatedly over the console is if there'd be a presentation, a copy of the presentation made available. Just like the last TechCast we did, a video recording has been made, and we will make sure that that is available to the folks to access and be able to review the presentation at their leisure. And I believe we might also be able to make a PDF copy of the presentation available as well. I will confirm that after the meeting with the folks from MLogica and get that taken care of for you guys. So that pretty much brings us to the end of today's TechCast. Appreciate everybody's attendance. and look forward to seeing people on the next TechCast, especially the folks that will be live with us in New York. Until then, it is goodbye from iSUG and Mlogica. Thanks very much, everybody.